Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Accenture Presents Masters of Change Digital Transformation Symposium in association with Moneycontrol and CNBC TV 18. And I'm your host, Ruchira Sharma. As you all have noticed, in the coming decades, CPG companies have been encountering structural shifts from both the demand and the supply side, and these are likely to be more disruptive than ever before. And while the upheavals in the global consumer, retail, and supply markets have wreaked havoc on established business models and marketing approaches, they can also promise huge rewards for those who anticipate new opportunities. Clearly, this turmoil in the global consumer and supply markets is likely to produce as many losers as winners amongst the CPG companies. So, in this third roundtable of Accenture Presents Masters of Change Digital Transformation Symposium, we aim to discover the trends and developments in the CPG and retail sector, digital journey, and also understand how the sector can develop a roadmap towards recovery by implementing digital transformation across all levels to overcome the current obstacles and also ensure business continuity. So, the topic for today's live discussion with leading industry experts is Ready for Breakthrough Growth, Grow Away from the Core. So, let me introduce our esteemed panel of experts. We have with us Ms. Annie Matthews, CIO, Mother Dairy Fruit and Vegetable Private Limited. Mr. Vineet Sharma, VP Marketing, South Asia, AB InBev. Mr. Harishankar Krishnan, VP Digital Core Transformation, DTS, Kimberly Clark. Mr. Gautam Garg, Senior Director and CIO, PepsiCo India. Mr. Manish Gupta, MD and Client Group Lead, Products, Accenture India. And Mr. Anurag Gupta, Lead for Strategy and Consulting, Accenture India.
Hello.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this discussion. It's great to have you here with us. So, to survive in the new normal, businesses need to rethink their supply chains. They can no longer rely on traditional business models. They need to expand their boundaries. They need to explore beyond their core markets. So, let us try and crack the code here in the ever evolving and changing consumer goods and service sector. So, I'd like to begin with you, Mr. Manish. How do you think that companies can leverage digitization to actually overcome all kinds of challenges in sourcing, supply chain, and also increase their engagement with the customers?
Hi, Richard. See, I mean, as you mentioned, it's a very dynamic environment, and we were just out of the pandemic, and then the war started, which disrupted the entire world again. Right? In terms of, and then I mean, in this world, I believe what will be the new normal is these changes will continue to happen. So what we are suggesting to a client in terms of to look at it a more, I mean, they have to take a leap, and I mean, what we're suggesting to our clients is they to start doing compressed digital transformation. And what do we mean by compressed digital transformation? It's a simultaneous and rapid transformation of multiple parts of the enterprise and reskilling of the workers, and integration of these activities in what previously would have been sequential and siloed programs. So it is the enterprise-wide change that happens fast and not all at once. I mean, all the CEOs are talking about taking and moving at very pace on this. And then there are three factors, three driving forces why this would enable the compressed transformation. Uh, I mean, in terms of cloud, AI, robotics, virtual, augmented reality are just few fast increasing array of new and improved technologies. Each of them has the potential to add exponential value, and more so if their use is coordinated. And I mean, in the pre-pandemic era, companies were using great digital transformation, but COVID hit and the companies had to find new ways to survive and develop any new opportunities, and which will continue. And the last, I think the pandemic has also permanently altered the consumer demand patterns. So I think these are the three forces, and
All right.
what we are seeing and suggesting to our clients in terms of to really compress the
Mhm.
digital transformation and leverage these technologies, and we believe whoever does it adequately would be the winners in the market.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that. Coming to you, Miss Annie, how did your company leverage technology to address the challenges in sourcing, supply chain, and also increase customer engagement?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Uh, I I mean, coming to the topic at hand, the how have we leveraged the? Could you please repeat that question once again? I am having some issues with the audio today, so if you could just repeat it for once.
Yes, yes. How are you leveraging technology to have a seamless supply chain and increase digital adoption and also cater to the changing consumer needs?
Okay. See, it is a mix of technologies which we have leveraged. When you look at the supply chain, if you break up the supply chain into the different parts, one is the inbound supply chain, the outbound supply chain, and the mix in between, the whole inventory management piece, right?
Hmm.
A mix of technologies like cloud applications, multiple mobile applications, the entire connectivity scenario has helped us deploy plethora of apps that connect every leg of the supply chain and has effectively bridged the gaps and created a supply network.
All right.
Whether it is visibility of our 3P manufacture, the quality of ingredients being used by them, the packaging
Mhm.
material being used received by them, the temperature at which the dispatch is happening, every step of the way technology is embedded into the process, right? For farmer engagement, we have created a very strong ecosystem with our farmers and other
Mhm.
stakeholders like sahayaks, transporters, vets, etc. There is not only automation in milk pouring and direct transfer to farmer accounts, which we have put in place, input services to farmers like ration balancing, cattle feed sales, animal health interventions. These kind of initiatives help us take the engagement to the next level. Uh, Inbound product visibilities. We have visibility of what milk is coming in which tanker, much
All
ahead
right.
of the tanker dispatch scenarios.
Mhm.
What is happening recently, in fact, quite recently, we rolled out entire consignment visibility of fruit and vegetables. So much before arrival, we have visibility of what is the consignment leaving the sourcing locations.
All right.
These are the interventions which have helped us build a very robust and agile supply chain.
Sure. Thank you for that, Miss Annie. Coming to you, Mr. Vineet, how do you think companies like yours have leveraged digitization to improve R&D? And also, have you been able to extend digital technology to sales and marketing as well, and not just supply chain and operations?
Of course, I think in COVID actually showed us that in this time, technology is the need of the hour, right? And you just cannot stay without connecting to our consumers and specifically to the world of sales and marketing. I think first and foremost, we had to ensure safety for our well-being for our entire ecosystem, whether it's consumers, customers, employees, and communities. And we did a slew of efforts around them. We reached out to our trade partners across India and installed a lot of point of sale materials that ensured safety for them. Coming to marketing, we had to pivot very quickly from our traditional campaigns to actually start marketing in a COVID world. And first and foremost, it all starts with our consumers, and empathy became the single biggest message for all our communication. As I said, utilizing technology wasn't an option. It was the only way you can reach out to your consumers. I'll give you an example. As a long-standing music supporters, we initiated a virtual live concert by a name called Podex Home, which had a monetary backing of over 2 lakhs per stream, and we
All
worked
right.
with the Who's and Who's to create a lot of amazing, creation for keeping our consumers entertained during this time.
All right. Great. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Vineet. Coming to you, Mr. Gautam, what is your learning here? What kind of overhaul was required uh, to align consumer goods and service providers like yours with the current digitization goals? Mr. Gautam?
Yeah, hi Ruchira. Hi everyone. No, so I think it's a very pertinent question. So I think there's been a lot of learnings, but for a company like Pepsi, we believe we've always been in the VUCA world, right? So yes,
Absolutely.
COVID has actually accelerated the pace of change, but we've always we are always ready for change, right? So I think this is the name of the game for us. Coming to COVID, there was a lot of learnings for us, because what we know is, from a stakeholder point of view, everything is going to change, right? The consumer behavior, our go-to-market channels, our supply chains, and most importantly, our ways of working, right? So earlier we were all working offline, then we started working online, and now we are looking at hybrid ways of working, right? So there's been a lot of learnings around this space, and as Vineet called out, the key thing for us is obviously the safety of our ecosystem. So not only our consumers, our customers, but also on the back end, on the supply chain side, and empathy for our employees, because the last 2 years have been tough, and we believe the teams have been resilient. They worked hard, but there is
All right.
also a bit of a workload issue. From a technology point of view, I think we were always ready for it, and this has just made us realize the importance of technology more, and we will
Mhm.
continue to invest from a PepsiCo perspective.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Gautam. Coming to you, Mr. Harishankar, what is your insight here? How do you think companies can leverage digitization to improve their R&D? And also, did you have to do a complete overhaul to align yourself to the constantly changing consumer needs, especially during the pandemic? What is your key learning here?
No, thanks, Ruchira. So, I mean, clearly, the pandemic and everything that we have gone through over the last 2 years, it sometimes, it kind of forces everybody, every employee, every company to kind of look back on what are we doing. And that's where, the whole theme of, what is your larger purpose and what is the purpose of the enterprise becomes really important, right? And for us, as an enterprise, I mean, our purpose is on, better care for a better world. And for us dealing in essentials, the pandemic has been a time when we have tried to make sure that despite supply chain disruptions, despite all the volatility, how do we make sure that we are making our products available to consumers who are really looking to it at this point in time, right? So,
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
enabling that, right, in a VUCA world, it obviously became really important, that we leverage technology and digital, to the hilt, right? So right from the manufacturing in our mills, how do we make sure there is product supply which is sustained? How do we make sure that we are able to ship to customers well, making sure we continue to engage with consumers? All of that, the extent of digitization, so to say, right, has grown up. It has been growing, but clearly in the last 2 years in the pandemic, you have seen a
Mhm.
complete a greater degree of focus across the industry, and that's something we have embraced as well. Apart from things like remote work, etc., which obviously became a reality for everybody. So this has been a
All right.
time of reckoning, and in many ways, I would say, as an industry and as an enterprise, we have made sure that we are able to meet these challenges and stay true to our goals.
All right. Thank you for sharing that insight there. Coming to you, Mr. Anurag, what do you think are the imperatives for the CPG sector to pivot to growth with crucial and critical digital technologies and partnerships?
Uh, Thank you, Ruchira, and hi everyone. I think we have seen, I mean, pandemic. There were already certain changes that were happening pre-pandemic. Pandemic accelerated that. To give you some examples, I mean, the whole direct-to-consumer space, right, as we call D2C, that's a sector that has scaled up. The
Mhm.
e-commerce business or the channels through e-commerce have scaled up. So clearly, these have unlocked growth potential, which earlier was not possible.
All
So
right.
we are seeing a lot of startups. We are seeing even existing incumbent corporates
Mhm.
getting into the D2C space, looking at how they can move from a mass approach to a more targeted approach, and
All right.
that's where digital technologies really help you to do that. There are
Mhm.
many companies now even building consumer databases, first party consumer databases of millions of consumers. So they are now beginning to know a lot more about their consumers and
Mhm.
then aligning their portfolio and their communication and marketing accordingly. So better and more targeted retail and distribution platforms, a better demand sensing of what consumers really want, and then
All right.
being able to do it in a more targeted manner, your communication is enabling and unlocking growth potential. I mean, beauty is a clear example as a subsector within CPG. We've
Mm-hmm.
seen the success of, let's say, somebody like a Nika, because
Yes.
earlier we had, consumers are not just transacting; they need a lot more information. If I'm a beauty consumer, I want to know, discover new products, discover new shades, and that was not something possible in the physical only world. But
Mm-hmm.
now that is something that's been possible through a lot of content being directly shared by companies with their consumers, rather than only sell to their intermediaries. So that is unlocking growth potential
All
of the
right.
CPG sector. So there are, multiple such distribution or retail related, consumer related, brand building related, demand sensing aspects, which
Mm-hmm.
are all coming together, enabled by digital technologies, which is
All right.
unlocking growth potential of the CPG sector.
Great. Thank you for sharing that insight, Mr. Anurag. But coming back to you, Mr. Gautam, how do you think CPG businesses can actually search for growth in unfamiliar or new places when it comes to digital technologies and partnerships, and use them as critical success factors going forward?
I think it's very important, like I mentioned before, right? The name of the game has changed, right? We need to understand what are the business changes coming to us. So traditionally, if you look at the CPG company, we were a very traditional trade focused company where we are selling to mom and pop, and then we
Mhm.
had the advent of modern stores. But now we are saying, with COVID and in this new VUCA world, there are a lot of changes, right? So there are changes on the pack size, right? Earlier we were having products on the go, so we had to pivot from products on the go to consumption at home. Coming
Mm.
specifically to our go to market or the sales system, we were using the Salesforce automation tools, and we continue to build on that because that is our core. But new channels are coming up, right? E-commerce is coming up. In a big way, there is direct to consumer. There talks about direct to consumer. There talks about personalized products for consumers. Uh,
Mhm.
and marketing is getting impacted in a big way. The traditional ways of media is being replaced, like Anurag said, right, with consumer databases, right? We get more uh, targeted information
Right.
about our consumers and what
Mhm.
are their preferences. So there is change happening in a lot of areas, and we have digital technologies play a key role because it's really not possible for us to go after each and every change in today's environment. We continue to work remotely, even today, even after 2 years, and I believe it is going to stay. So technology and digital technologies are going to play a key role to help us address all these opportunities, whether it's on the supply chain, whether it's on our go to market or
Mhm.
marketing, or our supply chains.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Vineet, would you like to add to this? What is your insight here in terms of using digital technologies and key partnerships as critical success factors to, kind of sail through future crises like the one we recently faced?
No, absolutely. In fact, in ABINBev, we were thinking much ahead, and one of the panelists said, right, and actually with COVID, things accelerated. We were looking at our own digital agency. We call it Draftline. This is a data-led creativity agency, and with the inception of this agency, we have used data extensively to create a lot of meaningful communication and understand the pulse of the consumers. We've used a lot of performance data to take in-flight decisions on campaigns, consumer sentiment analysis, and especially during COVID, keeping that pulse of the consumer in mind was very, very important. Some of the panelists also talked about social listening in particular. We have in fact gained a lot from social listening. We have identified consumer sentiments, current consumption patterns. I heard the rise of
Mhm.
in-home, which is something that we picked up way early as well. And then we pivoted a lot of our marketing campaigns and product innovations towards there. We also did some specific campaigns during a second wave of COVID, where we halted our brand focused communication. We opened our social media handles for consumers to leverage our
Mhm.
follower base to amplify pleas for medicines, oxygen cylinders, and so on and so forth. But I think this I'm excited with the rise of social listening as a specialized field in marketing. It has
Mhm.
allowed us to be much more closer to consumers, capture mega trends in the nascent stages, and customize a lot of our brand messages and experience. And not only an atmosphere where we are spraying and praying, but we are actually engaging them in the right moment, at the right time when they are much more receptive to listening to our brand messages. So I think it's definitely a big boon in that manner.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that insight there, Mr. Vineet. Coming back to you, Miss Annie. Mother Dairy, as we all know, is of course a leading milk supplier, and you manage to ensure non-stop production, right, from processing to logistics and retail network. So, how did you really manage that? And if you could share your insight in terms of the recent hike in milk pricing, of course, that was also due to the strain on supply chains. So, do you think digitization can reduce the strain going forward?
Yeah, see, we are a bit lucky and privileged that we have a time tested supply chain in place with very strong connections locally. Right, we are the milk and vegetable and fruit backbone of Delhi, and we stepped up to the challenge during the pandemic and did whatever is required to ensure that the uh, supply chain is maintained completely. Uh, we worked with the administration to ensure that our employees, staff, labor had access without any challenges, because
Mhm.
since we were essential services, we had to work and we could work during the lockdown scenarios. And we got support not only for ourselves but for our suppliers too, because it was essential that our suppliers are delivering so that we are able to keep the supply chain running. We did a lot of innovation also during those times. Like typically, we have a very segregated supply chain, temperature segregated supply chain. We
Mhm.
innovated and you delivered multi-temperature use vehicles during that period. We brought in a lot of milk in milk tankers. We had special milk trains running to address the supply challenges.
All right.
We set up exclusive last mile delivery for e-com and MRF customers, because there was a huge surge of demand coming in from that segment. We set up uh, strong kiosk model. I mean, that was one of the really agile innovations that we did, that we went and targeted all the societies in Gurgaon and Noida, where we
Mhm.
managed to set up kiosks locally to address the immediate consumer requirement and build a very close rapport with the consumer. So
All
these
right.
were some of the initiatives during the pandemic which required us to act agile, and also our strong local connection helped us with
Mhm.
that. Regarding the price hike, yes,
Mhm.
it was inevitable. As I'm sure you are aware that the input costs have gone up tremendously. The farm prices alone have gone up by around 8 to 9% since July 2021. Um,
Mhm.
this even then the consumer prices were kept intact. Around 75 to 80% of the sales realization goes towards the procurement of milk, right? So
All
we
right.
have only taken a hit of 4%. Not the entire hit has not been passed on to the consumer. Digitization or digitalization, whether it could have helped, yes, it helps. I don't think we looked at deploying digitalization during the pandemic only. We had been
Mhm.
on a continuous optimization path, whether it is route optimization, vehicle load optimization,
All right.
temperature monitoring to ensure that quality of products are maintained consistently.
Mhm.
All these were initiatives which we are anyway doing. Incremental technology, I mean, of course, further technology innovation will definitely help us. I believe
All
the
right.
potential for technologies like AI is huge and currently untapped. It that will take us to the next level.
Great. Thank you for that, Miss Annie. Coming back to you, Mr. Gautam, PepsiCo and its brands, of course, have been a part of our lives ever since we can all remember. But how do you really manage to stay relevant and cater to the demands of Gen Z? Because the biggest challenge for the CPG sector is to keep up with the ever evolving customers.
Yeah, so I think we are a consumer centric company, right? And our core objective is to ensure we cater to every need and occasion of every consumer, right? Like I mentioned earlier, the traditional marketing days are gone. We are investing in new digital marketing capabilities where we listen to the voice of the consumer. And if
Mhm.
you look at specifically to Gen Zs, which you referred, right, they are available mostly on these social platforms. So we are constantly listening to our consumers, not only Gen Z but across all age groups, and we continue to innovate. So if you look at it, even in the recent last 18 months or last 12 months, we've launched new products. So whether in the beverage side, we have the Mountain Dew Ice, which is a lemony fizz-based drink. Listening to the voice of our Gen Z, we launched the Lay's wafer thin chips, where the consumer were asking for more crunch and wafer style chips. We've just recently launched the chili Lay's flavor, looking at the Indian palate, right? So we continue to innovate and continue to launch more products. As a company, this is our core business, right? And we do understand every consumer is different and they have different demands at different times. And that is where our portfolio comes in, right? We have a wide ranging portfolio, which is basically divided into three areas. Fun for you, where we have products like Pepsi, Lay's, Kurkure. Better for you, where we have products like Diet Pepsi, Pepsi Black, and good for you products like Quaker, Tropicana, and Gatorade.
Great. That is an interesting demarcation there. Coming to you, Mr. Vineet, how do you think that you're leveraging new age technologies to really predict demand? I'd like you and Mr. Harishankar to take this.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have a very, very active ecosystem that we have built, which is in our in-house agency called Draftline that I mentioned earlier as well. It is a beautiful amalgamation of creativity, media, martech, and social listening, and all of these forces come together to ensure that we listen to our consumers. We create communication which is very, very relevant to them. We buy media platforms, or we are seen on those media platforms which our consumers we know are seen, and at the same point of time get a very quick response on what they are thinking about our brands, about our communication as well. I think internally we have institutionalized a more like a framework of partnerships,
Correct.
platforms, and different technologies. So we not only work with our internal partnerships that we have via our trade partners, but we also work with a lot of external parties, because our consumers are out there, and we want to capture their data, understand what they are consuming, in what occasions they are consuming, and how as AB InBev, our brands can have a role in their life. Not only that, we have institutionalized a constant panel of key opinion leaders and influencers whose main objective is to spot trends and key consumer insights for us. And we have
Correct.
been very privileged that at an early stage, we talk to them very, very quickly. At an early stage, we spot trends, whether those are consumer trends, innovation trends. We understand, and then we co-curate a lot of these campaigns and product innovations via listening to them directly. These are the people who are influencing a lot of people around them. They form the crowd that is changing a lot of behavior. And we are very lucky that we can hear from them directly on a very much more regular basis. But I think we are starting to build an amazing ecosystem around us, in which we can be very sharp in understanding our consumers, creating focused communication around them, buying a lot of media which is relevant to them, and have this constant listening of how they feel and what they feel about our work and the different trends that are happening in the world of consumers. So that's how we are leveraging here in AB InBev.
Great. Mr. Harishankar, what is your insight here? How are you capturing insights about consumers? If you could share your learnings about how do you really predict demand?
No, thanks, Ruchira. And it's a very interesting, opportunity for CPG, right? Because traditionally, CPG companies have always been very good at consumer insight, right? So deep consumer insight was always called out as, one of the core competencies of any CPG company. Now, in the new world, it is about data-driven insight, right? Now, the opportunity or challenge in CPG is, we don't have transactional data with consumers, right? Because most of our products flow through, through trade channels, through retailers. So we don't really transact with consumers. So it's unlike a telco or a bank who kind of thrive on transactional data. For us, it is about building data insights, even though we don't have transactional data. And that requires a lot of creativity, right? It's about making sure that we are able to harness first party data through multiple channels, making sure it is consistent, making sure it is triangulated, but at the same time it yields the rich insights, and that is something which we have progressively built over time. And I mean, our marketers today really look for that insight, which is much more data based, over and above the much more traditional and deep consumer understanding that we always had. Coming to your second part of your question, which is about how does this link into to demand planning, right? And that has been really important in the times of the pandemic, right? Because we have seen so much volatility. So it's about one, medium term, longer term demand planning, right? And everyone today understands, how those horizons have shrunk. But it is also
Mhm.
about short term demand sensing, right? How do we harness multiple data which exists, right? Both for for the enterprise, econometric data outside, data from
Mhm.
retailers. How do we triangulate all of that to get into much more richer demand sensing? I think clearly we see a lot of potential there, and we have harnessed a lot of that in demand sensing in this really volatile times during the pandemic.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Harishankar. Coming to you, Mr. Manish, in this fast-paced and complex VUCA world as we know it, how do CPG companies find the right partner to drive innovation?
Right. I mean, see, I think it's a dynamic world, and see the partner, the definition of the requirements of our partners, and what we often get, because there's a and the large of digital transformation which the company needs to do is in a time when their balance sheets are anyway strict, barring some of them, right?
Hmm.
So it's basically a partner who can hold hands, challenge them, and
All
guide them
right.
in the whole journey, that and then potentially also make investments, because I mean the whole definition of the partner or the vendor is dramatically changing, and
Hmm.
it's basically the benefit of both the partners, right? I mean, if I am partnering with any company, and in this particular world, and we have done with some of the partners, where can we commit to the outcomes,
All
right?
right.
And take a bit of a risk as well, and bring the larger set of capabilities. Because I mean, we are talking about digital transformation. Technology is just one aspect of it, right? In
Hmm.
terms of the industry expertise, the best practices, and also the reskilling of the workers as well. Because once you have the capabilities, I mean, give you an example. Recently entered into a retailer, and I was just looking for a shirt, and they showed me the new uh, the new stock, and I just asked that is there a discount on that? Uh, in the often world, they would have said no and please move on. But that lady actually went to the website. They had a aisle in the store, and they said, okay, I'll search, and there was actually a 10% discount on that, and they said, okay, I'll get you a shirt on that. So the intent was to there was this technology endless aisle in the stores, but I've never
Hmm.
experienced that the store person basically hooking you and saying that please go and buy uh, on that, because at least they have saved. So I think that's the type of partner I think we are looking forward. The companies are asking, and I think we are really happy to partner with them, and it shows the growth for both the company and the partner.
Great. Thank you for that. And that was a real world example of digitization and also of connectivity. Mr. Anurag, coming to you, what do you think are the key strategies going forward when it comes to effectively managing supply chain disruption? Mr. Anurag, could you hear us?
I think you are mute, Andra.
Yes, am I
Uh,
audible now?
yes, yes.
Okay. So I was saying, I mean, pre-pandemic supply chains were largely designed on cost efficiency. So these were
Hmm.
very efficient supply chains, minimal inventory, and that is where, all the tools and processes were actually aligned to. The pandemic has taught us that it is not just efficiency, but both resilience and agility that is required. So now supply chains are being redesigned to
Hmm.
deliver not just efficiency, but also resilience and agility. So
All right.
what that means is, I mean, if it's a VUCA world, the variability could come from any source in any part of the market for any part of the industry. So
Hmm.
we need end-to-end visibility in our supply chains. Secondly, supply chains are becoming very complex. And now we cannot rely only on human intervention to really run the supply chains. These have to become human plus machine. They have to become touchless supply chains where the supply chain teams are only getting involved for managing exceptions, irrespective of variability, irrespective of how the changes in supply chain happen. Can we build a robust supply chain system which is able to take care of and drive some of these supply chain functions? To give you an example, I think Annie mentioned the whole role of AI. Now,
Mm-hmm.
our ability to forecast what we will sell, how much we will sell in each market for each product. I mean, forecast accuracies have been at best 70-75% in the CPG industry on an average. Can we take this to 85-90%? I mean, the only way this can happen is if we are able to build an AI into our supply chains. So
Absolutely.
how do we have end-to-end supply chains with full
Mm-hmm.
visibility? If there is a demand sensing happening or a demand that gets captured at a kirana, our raw material and packaging material supplier should be able to get the visibility to that. So that's the end-to-end supply chain visibility. The design
All right.
has to be efficiency plus agility plus resilience, and
Mm-hmm.
technologies like AI, etc., have to be built in so that we can improve the accuracy of our forecasts of how some of these supply chain functions.
All right, great. Coming to you, Mr. Harishankar, there has also been an increased use of IoT when it comes to creating a more efficient manufacturing process. So, could you take us through the key benefits that you have experienced when it comes to digitization of supply chains?
No, very true. If you take core manufacturing, right, in our kind of industry, right, which is one, it faces the twin challenges, right? Many of our categories are quite asset intensive in their
Mhm.
manufacturing, and there's a lot of technology which goes into the manufacture. At the same time, we are faced with the volatility of consumer demand, which is true of the CPG sector, right? So if you bring these two twin challenges together, clearly digital manufacturing is a big opportunity, right? And a lot of it is about this whole concept of a digital twin. How do you model a manufacturing asset, right, in the kind of virtual world, right? So that you are able to get millions of data points, which anyway the machine is churning out, right? And how do we leverage that? How do we build analytics on top of that to make sure that you're not just getting efficiency, but also far greater agility, predictability, lower maintenance, and all of that, right? And that has been super important in a time when there is so much of volatility in the supply chain, right? Both on the demand side, but equally on the supply side as well, right?
Mhm.
Clearly, digitization of core manufacturing, has been and will be an even bigger opportunity for CPG.
All right, Miss Annie, would you like to add to this? The benefits of digitization to your supply chains. How have you really in your own user case scenarios, if you could share the benefits of as opposed to the earlier supply chains, now that you have digital supply chains, what are the key benefits?
See, each and every step of the supply chain, I think we build buffers today, right? Uh, because of the uncertainty which is present in the supply chain, in the environment, because of
Mhm.
not being able to sense the demand accurately and to be able to react to the demand accurately. There are so many lead times factored in. Even you look at inventory, how much of lead time are you factoring in into your inventory placements? I think the pandemic taught us that just in time can
Mhm.
be a challenge. Luckily, we were not a just in time industry, except when it came to the ingredients kind of thing, which we could tap the market directly for fruit and vegetable and milk, etc. But when it comes to, for instance, packaging material or some of the specialty ingredients, if you were just in time and some of those ingredients are sourced internationally also, we would
All
have
right.
been in a big problem. So that is where having the right balance of technology to be able to sense the market demand, but to
Mhm.
ensure that you have sufficient capacity and inventory management internally. This is where the optimization problem can be solved by leveraging technology. Uh, and apart from that, I think turning the user experience itself, that is the opportunity of digitalization as we go ahead. Being able to react to consumer demand and to personalization requirements, right? You were asking about the Gen Z
Mhm.
consumer. I have a Gen Z son, and I see that there's need for health and nutritious products are there. They want to consume that, but they
Mhm.
also want agility, convenience, everything delivered to them. To me, technology is what can help you do that personalization, that agile delivery, and that
Mhm.
is where the advantage will come in from if you're an early mover in technology deployment.
Definitely. And the Gen Z also wants everything at the click of a button. So
True.
definitely.
So
Coming to you,
Ruchira, I just
yes,
Ruchira,
sure.
just to add one point, right? In terms of a lot of things have been said on supply chain. I think supply chain is dynamic. What we are trying to do, work with one of our large consumer goods company, is to move them to more autonomous supply chain. So, I mean,
Mhm.
in the world, we were more manual. Then I think most of the Indian companies are getting to automate it. But autonomous means that what Amy mentioned, right, in terms of lead time, can the systems auto correct the lead times? If there are exceptions, if I'm not able to get the product, right, can it activate the alternative source automatically without human intervention? And so that's what Anurag was saying. So we are trying to attempt to that, and I think
Mhm.
through that the value unlock could be quite substantial.
All right. Great. Thank you for sharing that. Coming back to you, Mr. Gautam, could you quickly share your learning or your key insights from the benefits that you got by streamlining your supply chain and customer service with the help of digital technologies? Sir, you're on mute, Mr. Gautam. We can't hear you.
Yeah. Supply chain is the lifeline of the organization. As you know, my esteemed colleagues have mentioned, it's not easy, right? We were all geared for efficiency, but what has happened is we are talking about resiliency, we are talking about agility, and I think a
Mhm.
very important factor is inflation, right? So if you really look at it, it's really not easy. So what we are trying to do is we are focusing on what is possible, right? We are trying to compress whatever is possible, right? We're trying to reduce our costs. We're looking at technologies
Mhm.
which will help us improve better demand sensing. How can we do omni-channel service capability so that we can reach the customer in multiple ways? How can we do deeper penetration in rural markets so we can come up with asset light distribution models?
All right.
How can we uberize our transportation? uh, how can we improve our warehouse operation with digital technologies? We also talked about IoT, where
Mhm.
connected devices can help us in automation. We're also looking at new technology like 5G edge computing, which is going to improve processing in the hands of the you know uh, uh, in the mobile devices in the field. So like I said, right, there are a lot of technologies which are coming up, which have got specific use cases, which is going to help us get benefits across our supply chain.
All right. Mr. Anurag, coming to you, do you think the CPG sector is ready for breakthrough growth? And how do you think, in your perspective, has digital enabled supply chains really?
Well, I mean, we've discussed, I think, on supply chain, we did discuss a lot of the points, how supply chains are sort of being enabled by digital. The point on breakthrough growth, I mean, clearly the potential for CPG sector is immense. We know, we have billions of consumers with massive needs across, varying sectors and subsectors within CPG. I mean, one of our panelists just mentioned the need for health and nutrition. Now, pandemic has enhanced the need for, healthy, nutritious products. Uh, can we have more organic products or safe products? Can we have better products which
Mhm.
are less harmful? So, I mean, it's all table stakes. Consumer needs will continuously evolve. The CPG sector will have breakthrough growth if it is able to manage this conundrum and challenge of how it moves from mass to targeted. It cannot be a one size fits all saying, here's my portfolio and I'll try and sell it to, let's say, if India is the geography, to all Indians. There will be multiple segments of consumers. There are different channels, whether it's e-com, whether it is the kirana mom and pop stores. How do we get the right assortment for the right consumer segment distributed? How do we capture demand? So digital technologies is now enabling a lot of these challenges that the CPG sector had. Clearly, we are seeing that unlocking of some of these challenges that CPG sector had is completely possible through digital. The challenge is not, do we now have the technologies or digital to enable it? The challenge is, how can organizations embrace it, and how
All right.
fast can this pace of change really be? Wherein, some of the reskilling aspects of the organization, how you partner across the ecosystem, how do you bring in new capabilities, the change management part. I think those are the constraints. I completely believe the CPG sector can see much higher growths given what some of these new technologies can do in terms of unlocking the challenges.
Maybe if
All
I may
right.
add to what Anurag you just said, because you brought in a very interesting conundrum, right? The whole theme of mass to targeted, right? Now, in CPG, there is a similar conundrum, which is more about the global scale versus local agility, right? And we heard lots of examples, and Annie, you spoke about local agility, which is clearly so important in your industry, right? But equally, when you are designing products, you want to make sure that your products are available to consumers as quickly as possible across the world. Look at one mix, one product innovation, how quickly can you land in multiple markets, right? And traditionally, this has always been a challenge, right? Do you go for agility or do you go for scale? One of the things which digital technologies has helped unlock is it is no longer an either or, right? You could achieve the benefit of both global scale as well as local agility, right? If you build a strong digital core platform, that lends itself to both. And to me, that this can be a big unlock, not just on efficiency, but also about agility and therefore growth, right? This can be a big opportunity for CPG.
All right. Coming to you, Mr. Vineet, it's not enough to be profitable. Companies now need to align profitability with purpose. And AB and Bev, of course, have been working relentlessly towards various sustainability initiatives. So, why do you think this is very crucial for the CPG sector, and how do you think companies can be more responsive to the community needs?
Yeah, well, Ruchira, it makes complete business sense in my how I see this, and there's a lot of research around this that reports that companies that have sustainable business practices experience greater risk management, better innovation, better financial performance, and also not to forget better customer loyalty as well. Today we are seeing consumers are noticing this movement towards sustainability, and the biggest cohort of consumers who are doing this are millennials. Millennials, if you just read more about them, they have 2.5 trillion in spending
All right.
power, $2.5 trillion in spending power. These are the people who do not have only money in their pocket, but they also care where they're spending it. And roughly 70% of them will pay more for brands that support the cause that they care about. And these consumers are looking for qualities like how environment friendly a company is, what is a
Mhm.
commitment to social values, how are the products getting made. And you're right, in ABIN, we believe sustainability is our business. We have clear sustainability goals in our company on the pillars of agriculture, water conservation, circular packaging, and action on climate. But as a marketer, I believe marketing has a great potential, and I think it's a great force for
Mhm.
creating this cultural change. And I'd like to see this in two different perspectives. One is market sustainably, making this more like an inward practice that ensures that all marketing processes are environmentally and socially good. We should not take away more than how much we give back. And second is, how do we market sustainability? And this is more like an outward practice that ensures that a society in which we are living understands the meaning of sustainability, and how as companies, how as individuals, we can create a much more better world than what we have inherited. So I think it's a good mix
Mhm.
of marketing sustainably and marketing sustainability. So that's how I like to see it.
Thank you. Very well elaborated. Coming back to you, Mr. Harishankar, Kimberly Clark also extended immense support during the pandemic. So, why do you think companies need to be more connected to community needs and also take broader responsibility?
No, very true, Rachira. So if you see, for any consumer company, and for that matter, for any company today, right? I mean, there has to be a purpose beyond, just top line and bottom line, and I think that is becoming amply clear, right? Companies with purpose, will thrive, and everyone is embracing that. Consumers are looking for it, right? Investors are looking for it, employees are looking for it, right? So today it's almost a new paradigm in corporate that you need to go for that larger purpose. And I think
Mhm.
companies like ours are really well positioned on that spectrum, right? Because one, we're dealing in essentials. The whole theme of better care for a better world resonates both externally, internally, and it is a larger purpose which drives the organization. So clearly, I think consumer products companies like ours are well placed, not just for our industry, but almost kind of set the tone for how industry overall is evolving.
All right. Great. Definitely, that is the way forward. But just one last question before we get closing comments from all of you. And this is for you, Mr. Anurag and Mr. Manish. Whenever we talk about digital adoption, a major challenge is, of course, onboarding skilled labor. So, how do you think this can be addressed? And how do you think we can address the gaps in the existing workforce?
So I think, I mean, Manish, maybe if I go first, uh, clearly, organizations have had sources of talent and capability, but given how rapidly these new capabilities need to be adopted in an organization,
Mm-hmm.
one thing is organizations cannot rely only on the traditional sources of capability building. Taking the best graduates, let's say from colleges, training them on the job, and hoping that they become leaders of tomorrow and they drive the organization. A lot of these
Mm-hmm.
are unique capabilities. Organizations will have to own this as part of their own learning agenda. They will have to look at specialized learning agenda and courses which includes a lot of these new capabilities. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one. They will have to rewire their organizational capability. Secondly, I think they will also have to partner with the right set of partners. So rather than trying to manage everything in house,
All right.
become a business which is more ecosystem led, and capabilities that you can't have in house or can't sustain in house.
Mm-hmm.
Find the right partner you can trust, and let the partner do that for you. So not just your, hence that's a change in the operating model that you do.
Sure.
So a lot of the data led transformation, for example, companies are choosing partners whom they trust, and with whom they can drive a lot of this change in their organization. Likewise for digital technologies and so on and so forth. So companies need to really look at their operating model, as well as build a very strong learning agenda within the organization.
All right.
And just to add to what Anurag mentioned, I think I think one of the key paramount change in terms of to have a change agent within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens that the mindset of the companies are still traditional, right? While everybody can talk about a lot of stuff which is there, but you need a change agent who can challenge the status quo and navigate through the organization. And if you look around, the people, the companies who have thrived, not rather than survived, have those change agents as a part of the organization. So that's why I mean the reinventing the roles of these leaders is absolutely paramount in order to make that.
All right.
No, that's a
Great.
great point,
So,
Manish.
sure, sure. Go on, continue.
No, that's a great point, Manish, because we can always look at talent as a constraint, right? Or we can look at this as an opportunity, right? So if you really approach talent almost with a growth mindset in the
Mm-hmm.
new digital world, right? I mean, clearly, there are multiple sources of talent, right? It's also about leveraging partners. It's also about not casting people in stereotypes to say only this kind of talent can be digital, right? Because I mean, digital today is so multifaceted. There is a great opportunity for companies to tap multiple sources of talent. And like you said, how do we bring those change agents who are really the catalyst for digital transformation?
All right. Great. So, closing comments from each one of you. And Mr. Vineet, you could go first. According to you, what are the top two technologies that can help the CPG sector to pivot to growth? And what does the road ahead look like to you?
I'm very very cautious. I'm saying this for the third time in the call, but I'm really a big fan of social listening because I genuinely believe that's something is more like a necessity now for the marketers. We just can't wait for an research agency at the end of the month going to tell us what our consumers are feeling. I think we need to lead
Mhm.
that pulse. Secondly, I believe data. And some of the panelists talked a lot about the first party data as well. Today, I believe marketers must live and breathe data. It is the fabric of modern marketing. and by employing the right data sources, you can better understand your customers and build more precise targeting capabilities. And I'm very, very enthusiastic on the rise of MarTech, because MarTech is actually a combination of marketing and technology in that beautiful world that we are creating. And the role of marketers moves away from just creating campaigns or being the creative folks in the room. They now need to up the game, understand technologies, understand a lot of AI fueled tools that are coming in that will make their marketing efforts even much more better. So I think the rise of social listening, the rise of MarTech, these for me will be how marketing or how companies going forward will see a lot of evolving and understanding of their consumers as well.
All right. Mr. Gautam, what is your insight here?
So from my perspective, I won't call out any one technology. I would just say, we need to change our operating mindset. So in
Mhm.
IT, at least in PepsiCo, we call it the buy model strategy. So what we mean by the buy
Right.
model strategy is, on one hand, we have our core solutions, right, which are our ERPs and our core solutions, which are for making mobile. So we continue to invest in that because that's an operating necessity. But on the other hand, we invest in all these new age, platforms, as we call about, whether it's AI, AR, RPA, and ensure that we basically do rapid pilots and we fail fast. So what this is going to do is it's going to give us that cutting edge capability which will help us to compete in the future, and then we can
Mhm.
move these innovative capabilities as part of our core, and we continue to invest in our core, and we experiment with these new technologies. That's how I would go forward.
All right. Miss Annie, what is your insight here? What are the top two technologies according to you, and what are the imperatives for a robust supply chain, and what does the road ahead look like to you?
Thank you for that. I still stand by AI. To me, the combination of AI on analytics, on data, and the combination along with robotics, right? The
All right.
potential for drones, kind of thing. I believe that will be the big leap forward. Still
Mhm.
some steps away, but we are gradually building towards it. You see a lot of innovation happening in this space. I would like to address the points raised by Manish and Anurag about the talent availability also. Uh,
Mhm.
I I agree with them. It is very difficult to. So suddenly you find that there is a huge ocean of technology available, and
Mhm.
you need to look at the network as a whole and design technology to be able to optimize and resonate across the whole supply chain.
Yeah.
The problem is we may not necessarily have the entire talent available internally. When we reach out to partners, we find that it takes a lot of time for them to understand our business, right? So
Mhm.
how to arrive at that model where partners are able to work with us, invest in delivering the solutions rather than pass
Mhm.
on the risk entirely to the customers, and leverage technology to the best possible way. That is the sweet point which all of us are looking for. And if any partner is able to provide that as a market strategy, that would be awesome.
Great. Very well pointed out. Mr. Harishankar, what is your insight here? What does the road ahead look like to you and your top two technologies going forward?
I would say a two-pronged strategy on the whole digital transformation, right? One is about digitizing every function, every process in CPG, right? And with the infusion of AI ML and with much more data led, right? So if you take almost the kind of end-to-end wheel of supply of CPG, right? Starting with data-driven consumer insight, data-driven product formulation and R&D, digital manufacturing, uh, logistics and distribution enabled by digital technologies, and then the whole in-market execution and customer service, right? So that's about digitizing every function within CPG, which is a great opportunity. There is a second one, which is more kind of looking across end to end, right? Which is all the software aspects of digital transformation. So we spoke about talent. Clearly, there is a need for what does digital culture mean, right? What does
Mhm.
breaking the silos of an organization really mean? What is the new funding mechanisms? We spoke about partnerships, right? Super important in this world, right? Because no company can do it all internally. Equally, how do you build in internal talent as well? So I would say this two-pronged strategy of one, digitizing every function and process in CPG, and second, taking a horizontal kind of end-to-end view across a lot of these software enablers for digital transformation.
All right. Mr. Anurag and Mr. Manish, closing comments from you. What does the road ahead look like to you when it comes to, a macro picture of the CPG sector?
I think I am quite bullish in terms of the opportunity for the CPG sector. I mean, clearly there is massive consumer need that CPG companies should be tapping into, fulfilling, and gaining from it. The enablers that are now in place will enable the next leap of and the next wave of growth for CPG companies. However, this will require a new mindset. It will require, it's like saying what has worked for this industry and brought it here is not going to
Mhm.
take it there. So the next wave will not come by being more mass targeted. Is not by saying, "Okay, bhai, here's my portfolio and I'll service millions of kiranas and I'll be able to grow." The models will evolve. It'll become more complex. Capability
Mhm.
evolution will be the need for that will be far stronger, and a holistic approach to this transformation would be extremely critical.
All right.
I think to your point on two technologies, I would actually form a slightly contrarian view, saying uh, there's every technology available. They're all enablers. What's needed is a holistic transformation mindset, and that's what like Harikrishnan said. Unless we are able to take everything together and drive the transformation, we might be
Mhm.
just making piecemeal changes by leveraging one technology or the other. Those are piecemeal benefits that we will get. But if we take a
So a
holistic
holistic
view,
approach is required.
I think the CPG industry can really undergo the next wave of growth, which should hold for the next many years.
All right.
I will just
Great.
say, I just
Yes.
say that what we said in the beginning, that in order to win, we have to look at compressed digital transformation, which is more aggressive and progressive technology strategy that potentially can turn the challenge into an so I think we need to start driving and thinking in that
Great.
direction.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for sharing your insights and your learnings. And clearly, as you said, digital transformation can give the sector unique opportunities to scale up and innovate, and digital supply chains, emerging technologies are definitely leading the way to a more resilient future. So, thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our audience for watching this very special show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.